Let's be honest, people love talking about themselves. And this works with me every time in interviews when candidates do this. And as a talent acquisition specialist, I know exactly what they're doing, but yet it still works. When you start asking them,
That's awesome.
those are really good questions to ask. You kind of turn it on them and they get to start talking about themselves, and it does connect you with the hiring manager.
Well, hey, friends, welcome to this week's episode of The Boundless Show. This is Lisa Anderson here with you. And here we are for our roundtable. And I have got 3 job HR hiring professionals here to help us, basically handhold us through the process of rocking an interview, specifically around what are good questions you should ask. What are questions you will be asked, and you need to be prepared with an answer and stop acting like you've never interviewed for a job before in your life? And how do you just overall put your best foot forward, and what could this look like? So my 3 experts are Simone, Kelly, and Marshonda. Hey, y'all.
Hi.
Good to have you here. Okay, you guys are so great. All right, first off, just give us a little quickly by way of introduction, like how long you have been conducting interviews. How long have you been what do we call it? Talent acquisition specialist? Yes. That's pretty awesome. Marshonda, how about you? How long have you been in the game?
So I have been in the game for a little over almost 20 years now.
Wow.
So I've had some experience with both nonprofit and for-profit organizations, and have hired everything from entry-level to executive-level professionals. So I feel like it's given me a good overview of what organizations are looking for when they interview candidates.
Cool. Awesome. Kelly?
I have done this over 20 years, Lisa, and it's run the gamut from technical positions, entry-level positions, and executive level.
Very cool. Simone?
So between these two, I am the baby. So I've been doing this for about 6 years, interviewing all across the board, IT positions, entry-level positions, and higher up. So
okay. So let's just get down and dirty really quick here. What is a question that inevitably, almost regardless of the position, level, whatever being hired, or the type of questions, we can kind of popcorn it, maybe give a few examples, that people absolutely should be prepared to answer. They are just the milquetoast, run-of-the-mill. If you're not asking this question, you are not an HR person. What should people be absolutely ready to be on their game and ready to answer?
Lisa, I'll start. Okay. I think that candidates really have got to be ready to answer behavioral questions. That's like the top topic, and why employers ask those first are because they're looking for candidates that can navigate the different workplace situations. And so they will often ask you, tell me about a time when you...
Okay, so like scenarios.
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
Correct.
No, that makes sense. That's good. Okay, what else?
Another example is why this ministry or organization. I mean, people want to understand what kind of research have you done? What connection do you have to the organization or the company that you're applying for?
Yeah. How often, Kelly, would you say people are not prepared to answer that question? Like they clearly haven't even researched the company or the organization?
At least about a fourth to a third % of the time, they really have no idea about what you even do. And you can tell when you ask them, what do you know about our ministry? And they're really unable to answer, or they say, I've just driven past your building and thought it would be great to work in such a lovely building. Things like that. So it's obvious.
Okay, that's good.
That actually happens quite often.
Okay.
And a very simple question that for some reason makes people so nervous is the basic question that every single hiring manager 99% of the time is going to start off with. Tell me about yourself.
Oh, yeah.
For some reason, candidates, they don't know what is expected of them within that question. And I think they should realize that they're able to clarify They can ask clarifying questions because the hiring manager has your resume in front of them. So you should it's your elevator pitch, 2 to 3 minutes where you just give them the highlights. It's not the time to go back to, I was born in. So that's something you can really practice that and say the elevator pitch for yourself and use that every single time.
Yeah, that's actually really good. And that's so interesting to think that how an open-ended question like that, which you should be the expert on, is so intimidating for people.
It is. And you get to set the tone in the interview with that question.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Okay, what would you say? I feel like there's a lot of buzz, a lot of conversation around the whole concept of EQ. So having emotional intelligence. What can someone just define what that is and how you show up with that in a job interview?
So emotional intelligence, Lisa, is really about, there's several components to that, and that's really about things like being able to listen actively. So you're listening to the question, and you're not just sitting there waiting to formulate your answer, right? You're listening, really listening for what the asker is asking you in that question, being able to regulate yourself emotionally. So really being able to, regardless of how difficult the situation is, being able to navigate in a way that shows that you have a good control or management of your own emotions in a situation. Being able to show empathy is not just about being able to sympathize with what someone is expressing to you, but also put yourself in that person's shoes. And then being able and open to accept feedback, regardless of whether it's good or negative feedback. Just being able to take what is being communicated to you and use it in a way that's constructive.
Yeah. I think something that's really helpful in light of that is something, Simone, you were saying this before we even started taping, how your interview doesn't end when the interview ends. You might receive an offer or you might receive a rejection, and how even being rejected for a position, your response is going to matter. Talk about that a little bit.
Yes. So I think candidates tend to forget that you are not the only person or the only qualified person interviewing. So in a candidate's mind, they think my resume or my skills and experience align perfectly with this job, but so does maybe 2, 3, or 10 other candidates. And that's what candidates have to realize. If you have emotional intelligence, because that's more about the softer skills than the hard skills, a hiring manager will go for someone with the softer skills that is more emotionally intelligent than the person that has the hard skills. So you have to do things that's going to stand out. You have to show that you're able to be empathetic or be able to listen or be a good communicator. That's really the things that's going to benefit you. Show that you're going to have a good attitude, a good team player. You're going to make people feel valued and seen and heard.
Right.
And those are things that is very obvious in an interview, whether you have that or not.
Yeah. So let me ask the question. This is the question that sends me over the edge because I think it is so bogus, and I can't believe how many HR people and hiring managers still ask it. And it's the question about weaknesses. And I feel like people, if I hear, even me hiring people, if I hear one more person just say, well, my weakness is I'm too organized, or I'm just too amazing, or I'm too disciplined, or I'm too whatever. I just take on too much work, stuff like that. People are still going to ask that question. So what is a way to really win with a response in that question? What is a hiring manager actually asking for when they're wanting to know your weaknesses? Because no one wants to share those even to your small group, or whatever.
That's right, Lisa.
This is tricky.
It's a great question, and there are several reasons for that. One of the reasons is you want to understand, does this person have self-awareness, first of all? And if they give you an answer like, I'm a perfectionist, that is my weakness. It's like, can I really work with someone who really sees themselves as perfect? And would I really want to work with that person day in and day out? So that's never a great answer. I would never give that answer. It's better to really give an assessment, an answer that shows that you have assessed yourself and said, okay, I'm not the greatest public speaker, let's say, but there are things that I do that can compensate for that, and I'm still able and equipped to do that. And so it might be, I have difficulty showing up on time for work, and so I stick to a schedule. I set a couple of alarms. I get up extra early. I even try to change my workout to the morning so that I'm just so wide awake in the morning and can get there on time. So, I mean, it's really showing that you are self-aware, that you know you're not perfect, and you're going to be relatable to the other people that you're working with, and that you also actually thought about, how am I going to overcome this challenge that I legitimately have? And so that's what people are looking for, realness.
I like that, because you're giving the idea of, you're actually sharing something that is a struggle, but you're also solutioning it. So it's not like, so that's just who I am, so y'all have to put up with me.
Exactly.
That's going to be a hard pass.
Exactly.
Depending on what they share, I guess. That's interesting. Okay, let's talk a little bit about gaining some skills, maybe in anticipation of a job change or an interview or whatever. So the whole concept of professional development, are there types of things out there that you feel like, regardless where someone is in their career, they should be honing those skills and gaining additional, whether soft skills or hard skills, just things that, man, if you're going to have this on a resume and you're going to talk about this in an interview, you will probably set yourself ahead of the pack?
Definitely. So with regards to career development, because there is things like, is this going to be relevant to my career or my career goals? But also, can this be transferable? And that's almost better to go for, is this going to be transferable to maybe a different career path? So there's a lot of things you can do, maybe leadership courses. If you want to be a leader today, or even not, those are really good skills. Just strategic thinking. AI is a really big thing right now. That's going to be very beneficial, because they have some predicting numbers about the amount of jobs, the percentage of jobs that AI will take over in this amount of time. However, you have to get in front of that by knowing how to use AI. Because if you're able to use AI, you're going to be able to have more opportunities.
Okay.
Or maybe a lot of data type of career development, because you use that with a lot of jobs that you do. And then there's very basic things, right? Microsoft Excel, maybe Adobe types of things. So there is a lot of career development, but it is wise to make sure it's going to be transferable.
That's good. Yeah. Any other ideas? Or
I would say take advantage of industry-specific skills, conferences, any workshops in your local communities, or even if they're online. I would really say take advantage of those kinds of things to help build your skill set.
Yeah. It's interesting, because in thinking about that, I can think of friends that I've had who maybe and I'd love for you guys to weigh in on this, to compensate for a lack of soft skills, or even awkward personalities, or no personality, or whatever. They were just kind of accumulating certificates and degrees and hoping that would bump it up. I mean, is there a sweet spot of like how certified you are versus how you can work with people? Because I feel like it's they're saying more and more that like people skills and being able to have empathy and all those EQ type things are more important than just being able to hammer out a job or have the technical skills. But how do you guys feel about that?
So on LinkedIn Learning, there is a lot of EQ trainings that you can do that doesn't cost you a lot of money. You're not going to get a certificate from it, but that's just going to improve your skills, and that's going to show in job interviews, for example.
Yeah.
So people shouldn't get too stuck on the certification always, because I think as we do our jobs, we've seen that just having that certification doesn't always mean you can do the job well.
Okay, good.
In addition, I guess I would add that we have a lot of young people who are entering the labor force, and they scroll on their phones all day. They stay very isolated from other people. They don't engage as much sometimes. And I think they need to push beyond that and really be around people and go out and meet up with people, go to sporting events, go to different things and engage with other people, people you don't know, and go with friends, because I think they're going to develop the EQ necessary in a professional job setting versus I just scroll all day, I stay home, I stay in my jammies, it's so great, but then they're not excelling in a position because no one can relate to them. It's very difficult to communicate with them. They have challenges and all of that, but they're not practicing that.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not speaking about an entire generation, but I have seen that with some people that they isolate themselves. And I don't think it's helpful for the professional working world.
Yeah.
I would second that. I think that regardless of whether you are working on site or in some sort of remote work situation or hybrid situation, you still have to collaborate with team members. And so those soft skills, whether you do them standing face to face or you do them in a virtual environment, developing those skills is really important.
Yeah. That's funny because what you two just said reminds me of, as a person who has hired for a long time, what I have seen more and more that is just like, send me over the edge is, and I will say this is with younger adults, sorry all you listening, but I'm going to call you out, is just the I need, I want. And so approaching a job interview and answering questions all about you and being like, well, I want to advance blah, blah, blah in my career, or I want to work in this environment, or I want, whatever. I always say, and I say this when I speak to young adults, when it's anything related to career or vocation, calling, that kind of stuff, is you tell me in an interview how you're going to make my job easier. I mean, that is like that's what I remember from my days in PR, is like if I was going to pitch my expert to a producer on a show, that producer wants me to deliver as much of that show as I can and save them the trouble of calling people, of getting their experts, of coming up with the questions, coming up with the ideas. You make my job easier and I have a reason to hire you because, I want to do less work. Hey. So I think that is true. And that's such a great example of what you two were saying of just, you got to be sensitive to, read the room, figure out what problem are you solving here? Because you're obviously being hired because there is a need. And so I think that's so helpful. All right, let's flip it here for a couple minutes because I want to get from you all, this is the dreaded question I feel, especially for so many young adults, is, well, do you have any questions for me? Do you have any, what would be just great to hear as far as like questions? What are good questions for someone to follow up with, provided you didn't give them all the info or they didn't see it in the job desk or whatever? But what is a great way to show up with a couple questions in your back pocket that might be good to ask?
Even if the interviewing panel did answer all your questions, don't ever say you don't have any questions, because then it looks like you're not interested, because there is definitely a lot of questions that you can ask. So a big one, or a big tip that I have, let's be honest, people love talking about themselves. And this works with me every time in interviews when candidates do this. And as a talent acquisition specialist, I know exactly what they're doing, but yet it still works. When you start asking them, what do you love about working at Focus on the Family? How would you describe the culture? How long have you been there? Those are really good questions to ask. You kind of turn it on them and they get to start talking about themselves, and it does connect you with the hiring manager. So I would say that's a big tip.
That's good.
Just get people talking about themselves.
That's good. That's awesome.
People love that. I would say ask questions about, if you're dealing with the hiring manager, interviewing with the hiring manager, ask, what is your leadership style? I mean, it may not even be a match for you, and you're considering the company as they're considering you. So it's not an automatic that you just are expected to take any position that is offered to you, but you're really evaluating, is this a match? Is this an opportunity that I can really bring value to, like you said, Lisa? And then Also, when are you looking to fill the position? I mean, that simple question shows an eagerness. Like, I am ready. I am ready to start with you, and I'm excited for that. So
That's good.
One that as a hiring manager, I love to hear, what does success look like at the 3-month, the 6-month, the 9-month mark. So to me, that shows that this person is already dialed in, and they're looking for ways that they can help me, as you mentioned earlier. We're hiring to solve a need, right? So if you come to the table with, what would that look like for you if I were to be chosen for this position? To me, that as a hiring manager, that speaks volumes about their motivation and why they are applying for the role to begin with.
That's really interesting. And I think it gets back to what we talked about at the beginning of like knowing the company, maybe knowing the position, and being like showing, excitement, because most people are working in their jobs, especially management level, because they feel passionate about what they're doing or about the organization or about. So you show that you're equally excited. No one wants to hire someone that they feel they have to convince like to work there or be like, well, we got to get you excited about this. So I think that is so helpful. Okay, kind of as we finish out here, quick ideas on someone just blows an interview. It was clearly bad. They know it was bad. Is there any way for them to salvage it short of taking you out for steak or doing something that's not legal or not appropriate? What can they do to better their chances of it not being a total wash or a disaster?
Wow, I would say asking for feedback. I prefer the honest and direct approach. Not how did I do, because you know that you just bombed it, right? But I would encourage questions like, how could I have done better, or what areas of improvement might you recommend for me? I think, again, you may not be chosen for that particular role depending on the manager and the need at the time. But again, there may be other positions within the organization. And I, as a recruiter, am going to remember that you invested the time to hear from me in the moment what went well and what didn't go so well.
Yeah, that's good.
I've had the experience where someone has written me an email and they've said, I don't feel like I answered one of the questions very well, and I've thought about it, and I want to share a little bit more information because I don't want to leave it to where you really don't understand me, and I wasn't clear in that question. And then they just expound on that. I thank them for that. And at least I know they're serious about the interview, even if they did not do well, and they're making every attempt to... I don't know, amend that.
Yeah. I've got to imagine that, like, for nonverbal processors, an interview process has got to be just terrifying because it's like I've experienced that with people when I'm like, y'all, we're in a brainstorm, and all the like introverted nonverbal processors are like, can you circle back in 2 weeks? Because I can't just give you ideas right here. And so, but the fact that you have to show up and you don't really know where the interviewer is going to come from, you got to kind of get your game on and be ready to say like, I might need to circle back because it might not go as well as I think. That's good.
I think it's important to just stay humble and honest. Even at the end of the interview, if you know, okay, this didn't go well, just look the interview panel in their eyes and be honest about it. Just say, I was very nervous, but I'm so excited about this opportunity. I really feel like I can add value. And then candidates have done that a lot. What Kelly just mentioned, that's very true. Where they circle back with an email, wanting to clarify a few things. And we always send those over to the hiring managers so that they're able to see that.
Yeah, you can say the one good thing I'll offer is everyone will feel at ease because I'm the most awkward person here. Everyone will feel good about themselves because I've proven myself to be the most awkward. So, well, you guys, thank you so much. What a wonderful, just the insight I think has been super helpful. So thanks for weighing in, and all of you listening. I hope you're going to take some of this to heart. And if you use it in an interview coming up, we would love to hear about it. So thank you, all of you pros.
Thanks Lisa, for having us.